tipping things off with Alabama and Florida. This was that number one seed conversation that I alluded to earlier. First off, point spread, opening line on FanDuel, Alabama -3.5, -104, total of 176.5. The number one seed odds per Fanatics Sportsbook. Remember to price shop the best odds over at thelines.com. Tennessee, just looking at this thing holistically, to get that fourth number one seed with the first three being Auburn, Duke, Houston. Tennessee -110 after beating Alabama over the weekend. Florida +120. Alabama +225. So a huge swing game potentially, especially if Tennessee were to lose to Ole Miss on Wednesday afternoon, or Wednesday night, I should say. We're recording on Tuesday afternoon. Handicap-wise for you, is this a game you're looking to bet, home tax? Another spot where this is coming into play, where KenPom and the market about 2 points off. Any edge for you here, Justin?
Tough to get a real edge on a game like this. Top of the board, both teams ranked in the top 8, both KenPom and shot quality. So you're not fooling anybody. These are two of the best teams in the nation. Everyone's had this one on their calendar marked down. I mean, a random Wednesday night in March, and you just get a beautiful matchup between two of the most fun teams in the best conference in the country. This is arguably a Final Four game, and it's almost disappointing that it is so far set into the season that they might not have the initiatives to really be out there giving it their all, right? We do know that much of what's going on here in the standings are look pretty good, right? Florida 12 wins and Alabama 12 wins. So yeah, there's some seeding, but both teams are in. SEC title at the end of the year for the tournament is, you know what? I don't think anyone needs that to get in. Anyone who's winning it is not really. I mean, maybe we see that type of run, and sometimes that happens because the other teams don't care to really play it because they have their sights set on bigger things, and winning an SEC tournament isn't as big of a deal as, honestly, winning the round robin in the regular season, which proves your true dominance more than single elimination is ever going to anyone who truly understands the way these things work. So win the regular season, play for March Madness has a lot of validity to every single team that plays it that way, in my opinion. So I don't know. It's really hard to evaluate some of these things and evaluate if there's motivation for either team. I would imagine playing at home against Florida with the back and forth that's been going on in this conference. They're playing this game. You can't really sit there and try to pick it apart. I'm not going to. That wouldn't be a part of my handicap or not. I think for me, it's still played pretty well. KenPom going to sit there around 100, and yeah, that's a lot of points. Close to 170 points here. I think that's probably pretty correct. 172, 173. It's creeping up to 177, 180. Man, that's probably where I start to become too maybe old school in my thinking, and I get a little worried because I'm like, you should take the under. But
well, to your point
I'm not gonna. That's where I would, like, mathematically, it's where I lean, but I think you got to trust the market. I do think, I mean, you can just bet Duke all season and win money. It's kind of, isn't this the same vein? You can't just bet Alabama, Florida to go over and expect them to score, go 95-95. Like, I really think that maybe the right play isn't the -110. Maybe it's going up to that 192.5 line. Right.
Yeah.
And even if you're not getting, maybe the expected value by, the market weight isn't right, but that's with a bell curve evaluation. Maybe you just need to realize that the distribution is shifted such that the balance meets at the 177, but the actual way it's scaled should be that there's actually a big chance of it going well past and a big chance of it going well under. Like, maybe you should play under 165 and over 190 or 195 and expect
like a smaller bet.
Right. But, or like, inverse middle at plus 200 on either side and expect the market to just be like reflective of the midpoint. And it actually from, things that are very far away, not that it's always going to come in at 177 a million times, but that it's going to come in at 197, 197, 197, 157, 157, 157. And in essence, yes, it's a 177 point distribution on average, but you could get either one of those. Like, there's just so much variability here. Like, if they lock this down and everyone wants to win, like it's, the last waffle before Waffle House closes for the night, which doesn't happen. People are going to fight. The defense could get tight, and you could get a game like that at the end of the season where we see possessions start to get fought for. But yeah, I like my dual alt theory. Maybe I'll place a bet at like plus 200 on either side.
I kind of like your alt under look, and there are a couple reasons why. So we touched on this, the antithetical over the weekend, ahead of the weekend, with Illinois, Texas A&M, Mississippi State. Three teams that were underperforming with their net three-point percentage, so their three-point efficiency versus the opponent. Florida has been outperforming their net three-point efficiency over the last month by a mile, shooting over 40%. Now, you could argue they're a good three-point shooting team. We saw it over the weekend, Walter Clayton Jr. A lot of these guys are very, very efficient when you give them open looks, which you'll see per shot quality. The opposition shooting around 33%. So no, that's not 30%, but that's still a 7 percentage point differential when you look at net three-point percentage. And then on the flip side, or I guess conversely, shot quality, we've touched on this with teams underperforming down the stretch. Maybe a team like Michigan that before the Illinois loss was up by double figures, a few possessions. The final score looks a little bit closer than it was for most of the game, like the Oregon game, for instance, in mid-February or so. Shot quality had Florida over Texas A&M as a 12-point win. Florida wins by 19. Now, that may not seem like much just because, okay, Florida wins the game by double figures, but Texas A&M blew at least, I don't know if you're watching the final 2 minutes, 3 minutes. The only reason I was, Justin, was because I had a second half bet on Texas A&M. But they blew so many layups down the stretch, whether it was Zurich Phelps or Payne at the rim. This game probably is more
They
so
left
in that
6
range.
points at the rim per shot quality.
Yeah. So I could definitely see this being a spot where Alabama comes off of the Tennessee loss where they were up for much of that second half. They lose on the walk-off Meshack 3. You're pissed coming back home. You're now third in the conversation for that final number one seed behind Tennessee and Florida. And Florida underperforms on the road. Now, the one caveat to that is, well, Alabama hasn't shot well from three at home, shooting 32.2% from deep in Tuscaloosa versus 39% on the road this season. You could argue the opposition they faced in some of those home games could play a role, but that's pretty drastic. So I don't really know what to make of that, to be honest. But situationally, this is where I could see Florida underperforming the market's expectation. And quite frankly, we're seeing the market pricing this one correctly, if my intuition is correct there.
I agree with you. I kind of do like the Alabama side a bit. If you're like, oh well, I have to play a money line, I have to play a side. I do think it's Alabama. I think you can feel pretty good about them getting it done at home. Florida, again, they present the potential to win this game on their shot making. That's what the line is indicative of. They could just beat them. They could just have that type of day. And that there's such a decent chance at it and then also the other side of the ball, they're going to play decent defense, that there's a realistic shot. So yeah, it's probably like 60% or so, maybe 58% for me, Alabama. Spread very likely going to balloon up at the end. I would be shocked to see this thing finish tight. It comes down to like those last second prayer shots going in to cover something like this, in my opinion. You're going to need Florida to have the ball down 5 and take that 3 and hit it or go in for the layup with no defense to push it. And that's just not a bet I want. I want the other side. I want the home team that's going to want to hit every single free throw to put it out of the full possession reach. 3 at the end of the day is a key number. It is. It means you can't win on one shot. Sure, a shot and a foul. Okay. But you have to then hit a 3 through a foul, which is hard to do. Again, I really like that number for a home team in a big game. 3 is pretty nice there. I expect it to have probably more value in the long run than the money line. I don't want to pay that price. I don't. And the opposite holds true as well. I probably could see that Florida +3 doesn't have a lot of value to me. I want
Take
the money
line,
line on Florida.
right?
Right. I want money line on Florida. I want spread on Alabama. And if we have to come back here and it is Florida by 2, and you guys want to yell at me, that's fine. That's fine.
Alabama by 2.
Sure. Sorry. My bad. Long day. But again, we've done. It's been a good season. I think there's reason to believe this type of stuff is legitimate because again, it's just the way these late game scenarios unfold. And yes, on average, is KenPom going to be correct? And are we going to remember the times where the number gets absolutely nailed and we're like, wait, Vegas knows? It doesn't. No, Vegas does not know. Vegas does not know. It's I saw a tweet. It's all survivorship bias. I saw a tweet today saying, do ACLs do anything good or do they just break? As though every single cut and jump that every human has ever made laterally in the entire existence of our species wasn't built off of an ACL. It's just how the brain works. We do not remember the success. We remember when things break down. So don't be like that. Survivorship bias will kill you in betting. Recency bias will kill you.
Well, that's kind of a microcosm of society, right?
It is. It totally is. It totally is. I mean, we could go so far. I mean, since it's sensationalism at its finest, right? You have to be very weary of it. It happens in the sports markets. I mean, you could argue that the AP poll in college basketball is its own microcosm of sensationalism and recency bias, and survivorship bias, because it gives winning a game too much value when winning by 1 and losing by 1 are actually separated by 2 points. The AP poll will have you believe that it changes the entire destiny of a team. There's my rant.
Well, no, it's fair because, and this isn't a knock on the novice bettor. We want to help you. Hopefully you enjoy the podcast. Hopefully you learn something. But there are novice college basketball bettors out there that look at the AP poll and say, okay, Florida is number 5. Alabama is number 7. Why is Florida a dog? Well, we're giving you every single reason why that's the case. And it may not come to fruition. To Justin's point, maybe Florida wins the game outright. If you're betting on this game, this is why I don't want a piece of it before we move on. You're betting on shot variance.
Of course. Well, come on. What else are we doing? Basketball is a game of shot variance. You're going to bet on basketball. You're going to bet on shot variance.
But especially with Alabama.
Sure. Alabama for 4 straight years has had their average 3-point attempt rate over 46.5%. It's ridiculous. But yeah, I saw someone be like, what do you mean Maryland's going to be a 6? They're ranked so-and-so. Stop it. It just doesn't, it's really, I understand.
People don't get it, man.
It is truly the signifier, I think, of crossing over between, and again, I hope no one takes offense to it in the comments, but it's the signifier between crossing over that line of just the viewing to the understanding of the actual performance of the teams, which again, I think the committee, to their credit, does a better job than the casual fan does, which is why the casual fan gets sometimes confused with a seeding because, I like to think I follow all the sharpest bracketologists in the space that probably do a better job than the committee on aggregate. And again, they use record-based metrics for selecting, and they use predictive-based metrics for seeding, right? So that balance of what they do at the top to determine who's actually the best and deserves the 1 versus the 2, this region versus that region, 3 versus 4, versus who gets in on the final cut, who gets those bids, it's not ubiquitous. And it's like there's so much that goes on here. It's not easy to understand by any means, but it certainly is deeper than win-loss record. And that's kind of all the AP is. It's really just what's your like recent win streak? How many games have you won of your last X games? If you lose 3 out of your last 4, you're going to need to re-win 6 of your last 7 before anyone really starts to consider you, unless maybe you're in the SEC, and that's a whole nother conversation. But welcome to college basketball in the big year 2025.
I'm not sure if any of our listeners and viewers signed up to get Justin's TED Talk today, but he is wearing a suit jacket, which makes him look like he is giving a TED Talk.
I'm going to have to clip this one big time, Eli. That's all I'm going to say. You're going to see clips from this one raining down from above for all of March.
Absolutely. Last tidbit on this game before we move on to a couple Big East matchups and then handicap the Missouri Valley Conference. Will Richard, 45% from 3 over the last month. Thomas Houck, 41. Elijah Martin, nearly 45, so right below Richard at 44.8%. Clayton at 37.5%. Florida's a good shot-making team. If you want to bet the money line, fine, but they're going to dip. You're going to see some variance. And I thought we were going to get it against Georgia last week, even though they were down by 20, 15, 10 for much of that game. We didn't get it because Clayton went off. And so did Richard. I wouldn't be shocked if Bama covers, total goes under. But I'm probably not going to bet it.
No, I'm not either. Maybe my alt thing. That's about it. Probably small if I do it. Small for me. Which if you don't know, I'm high volume. Oh, that's what I meant. You're like, yeah, I'm up to 80 bets this year, bro. I have like 500 bets since January 25th or something. So and that's just pregame. That does not even include live bets. So
we got differing opinions. And we have different handicapping strategies.
Right. And like, again, I play very much like I'm just going to trust that I can win in the out long term. I don't need to pick my spots. And I'm going to just trust that I can do it, essentially just trust the numbers, eyes closed, spray. And it's not spraying and praying. It's spraying and paying.
Volume.
Right. It's spraying and paying. So it works. So again, it's a very different approach. I think this is probably not somewhere where I have the edge. I'll play small, like play around. This is something where I think maybe you can try to uncover something that you could build out to understand games like this in this very public, high liquidity, Power 5 type game, end of season, well-modeled thing. Like, there's got to be, it's not perfect. There's got to be something in there where routinely you can catch them getting it wrong in terms of how they offer these games. And my guess is that they give it too much credit in the middle, that their standard deviations are too wide, and that more likely than not, you have a very good chance of getting out to the liminal games where one team blows the other out, where, Alabama for some reason scores 60 points and Florida scores 90. What does minus 30 look like for Florida today? That's definitely in the cards and probably very plus EV. I'm not modeling it, so I don't know. But I would imagine that those are the crevices where you're going to beat the books in these games, not getting it right at the minus 3.5, 177.5.